All right, Mercy Road. How we feeling this morning, huh? We feeling good? Hey, happy Father's Day to all the fathers who are here. I hope that you have already grabbed your sunglasses. If not, grab your sunglasses on the way out. Can you guys do me a favor? Let's welcome those who are watching online. Come on. Welcome, guys. We're so glad that you're here and that you're joining us. And I think it's so amazing that the power of technology avails us all to experience the presence of God, even if we are not physically present. Come on, how many of you know that no matter where you're at, I hope that you're making this a sacred space, your living room, to experience the presence of God. And today, I've been tasked with a sermon topic on what does it look like to live the blessed life. By the way, my name's Davey. If I haven't got a chance to meet you, I'm just a teaching pastor here. But the topic we're tackling is what does it mean to live the blessed life? This is week 3 of some good news series. How many of you guys want some good news? You want some good news today? Yeah. There's been so much that has happened throughout our nation and our world over the past year, really. And I think it's really ironic that at the very beginning of this year, I was listening to messages and sermons from other pastors, and there was everybody seemed to be touting this thing, that this was the year that there was going to be clarity of vision. 2020, right? You know what I'm talking about? Clarity of vision and clarity of purpose, and this was going to be the breakout year, and everybody was kind of touting that, and I don't think they're wrong. Come on, I think we have experienced some things this year that has caused some clarity of vision for us to help us understand what is important and what's not important, to help us understand and see some systemic injustices that are taking place in our country and what the church's role is supposed to be to bring and usher the kingdom of God into our country and into our world. Come on, I'm ready to preach this morning. Are you ready to receive this morning? I think that there is clarity that God wants to bring into our midst. And what we are talking about in this series is a message that Jesus preached where he brought extreme clarity. Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount, and it happens to be the most famous sermon ever recorded. It also, as even secular scholars will say, it happens to be the most influential message ethically of any other speech or message in all of history. Matthew chapter 5, we'll get there in just a second, but I wanted to kind of kick things off with this. About 5 years ago, Jeep, the company Jeep, ran a series of print ads. How many of you guys like Jeep? Right, you drive a Jeep, you like Jeep. Okay, we got a lot of, right? How many of you want, you want like a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon or something for your play car? You kind of go around and do all that stuff. Like, Davey, you have a play car? We're gonna talk about the blessed life today. I don't have a play car, but if anybody wants to bless a pastor with a play car, come on, somebody. I'm kidding. We're gonna unravel that entire philosophy right here, right now. But Jeep ran a series of ads 5 years ago in a print magazine in France. And the mantra of this ad was, see what you want to see. See what you want to see. They were trying to help people, they were encouraging people to travel, to go out and see what they want to see, right? But they did a little play on words with it by running these print ads, a lot of creative artistry. And so they ran one ad. One ad looks like this. This is the one ad that they ran. What do you see? What do you see? Come on. Looks like maybe a deer or a cow, a baby cow. But if you flip it upside down, you'll see something different. What do you see now? A seal. You see the seal? Isn't that interesting? Some creative artistry right there. Very, very interesting. They ran a couple other ads. What do you see right here? An elephant. Can you guess what you see if you flip it upside down? Come on, I see some of you like this right now. Don't do that too much. You'll fall out right here. It's a swan. What about the next one? What do you see? You flip that upside down, what are you going to see? A giraffe. A giraffe. You guys see it? You can see what you want to see. You see, the reality is in that image, that picture, the giraffe was always there, but you didn't see the giraffe at first. What did you see? You saw a penguin. Then you flip it, and you see the giraffe. It's not like they changed or distorted anything. It was always there. You just have to see it from a different perspective. And this is what Jesus is doing when he comes on the scene in Matthew chapter 5 and brings this message to people. He is trying to flip reality for everybody, turn it upside down, saying you're experiencing a reality. You're experiencing a kingdom of the world that holds with it different ideologies, belief systems, practices, things that you need to attain or strive for. And I'm here to tell you and bring about a different perspective, a different kingdom with different ideologies. And so he starts out in Matthew chapter 5, and this is what he says. In verse 1, it says, one day he saw the crowds gathering. You think they were doing social distancing limitations at that time? Probably not. Jesus went up to the mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around him, and he began to teach them. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of God is theirs. Let that sink in for a second. Because I don't know about you, but when I think of the blessed life, I don't think poor. Right? I mean, just naturally, in my own nature, when I think of the blessed life, if someone says, man, I'm blessed, God's been blessing me, I got God's favor on me, initially what I think of is, man, like I've got health, I've got wealth, things are up and to the right, everything seems to be intact with my family. There's not like brokenness or anything weird that's going on. There's no weird relationships that are happening in my life. Like I've got my job, like I am blessed, right? But Jesus goes, God blesses those who are poor. Let's go on, verse 4. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Verse 12, be happy about it. Very glad. Now, hold on a second. When I read this, I can find myself in this list. Can't you? When you read this list, you can go, you know what? I can kind of relate to one or two of these things. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who seek and thirst for justice. Like we can kind of relate to this stuff. The problem is as I relate to it, what Jesus says at the very end of it, be happy about this, I'm struggling with. Right? Like what does it mean? Like when you mourn, what must first happen for you to mourn? You have to experience some kind of significant loss, right? It could be the loss of a person, someone that you love. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of a dream. It could be, but it means, it necessitates that you have to experience loss. And Jesus says, be happy about it. Excuse me? Well, what has to happen if you are thirsty, you have an insatiable desire for justice? Well, it means that you have to have had experienced some kind of injustice in your life. And Jesus says, be happy about it? Like we struggle with reading this because on one side of things, we hear this ideology espoused that the blessed life has everything to do with possessions or prosperity or prominence or popularity. Like that's what one side of the camp will tell us. But then we read this and we're like, wait, are you telling me, Jesus, that I need to try to aspire to something completely different? I need to like aspire to mourn? That's what some camps have taken to the interpretation of this. That now I need to strive after, because God said the route to the blessed life is those who mourn. How do I like try to have significant loss in my life? What? Is anybody else confused as we begin to unravel this? I struggle with it. There are even There are even ideologies that will tell you, like, if you want to be blessed, you have to be the complete antithesis of what the world says is blessing. If they say prosperity, if they say health and wealth, you have to sell all of your possessions, give them to the poor, and go live with the homeless the rest of your life. And I'm like, is that what he means here? And if that's the case, if these are characteristics or behaviors that I'm supposed to strive after, can I just be honest with you? I don't really want to. Like those who are poor, those who are humble, those who are persecuted for doing right, I honestly don't want to. And I feel guilty saying that. So maybe this isn't really what Jesus is saying. Maybe he's not ascribing to either one of these extremes of ideologies. Maybe he's bringing a different truth into this whole picture. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. We tend to determine our blessing or how we're blessed. Go ahead and put that up right here. We tend to determine how blessed we are by our possessions, our prominence, our prosperity, or our popularity. But God determines or evaluates our blessing by our position. So maybe blessing or the blessed life isn't so much about what we have or what we don't have. Maybe it's more about who or what has us. Maybe therein lies the key to the blessing. So maybe when Jesus is coming on the scene and he's saying this stuff, perhaps this isn't like a prescriptive thing. Like, hey, if you want to be blessed, you got to lose significantly and mourn over it. Maybe it's a descriptive thing. Maybe he is coming out and he is looking upon a crowd that is not unlike many of us who have experienced significant loss, who have experienced bouts of poverty, who have experienced significant injustice. And he's saying, hey, listen to me. The kingdom of God is here for you as well. You see, the commonly held ideology of that day was that if you were poor, you've fallen out of God's favor. That you did something or someone before you did something that now God was cursing you and so you're poor. That if you were sick and you couldn't go into a certain retail store or you couldn't go to the temple to worship because you were plagued by something, that you did something wrong and now you have fallen out of God's favor. And I know we can sit here and go, well, that sounds archaic of a belief, but isn't that what we tend to do sometimes too? Like when things aren't going really well for us, when they're not up and to the right, we tend to go, wait a minute, how did I fall out of God's favor? What happened? We don't tend to go, yeah, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. So maybe the key to this blessing thing is, again, less about what we have or what we don't have. It's more about who has us. It's more about who has or what has our attention, our affections. Who has our allegiance? Who has our loyalty? Who holds our opinions or our fears or our hopes or our dreams? Like, maybe therein lies the key to figuring out what this blessed life is. My wife and I, we experience some kind of significant tragedies or traumas or things in their life, situations, circumstances that are difficult. We help them kind of untangle those things and see where God is in those things so they can find healing and restoration. And there's a formula that we take everybody through that we coach, and it's the formula, we call it the ABCs for emotions, but I think you can overlay this as the ABCs for blessing. And I want to share that with you today. It's less of a formula. There's not really an equals mark. It is more of like a framework for how we experience blessing, okay? And there's a couple things that we do have the ability to control, and there's a couple things we don't have the ability to control. And the key to experiencing blessing is knowing what we can control and what we can't. So if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down, ABC, okay? Put on your paper, it's an acronym, ABC. A stands for activating event. Activating event. B stands for belief. And C stands for consequent emotion. There is a pattern that happens in every single one of our lives. You can overlay your life and you can see this take place. There is an activating event or several activating events, situations, circumstances, things that befall your life that you cannot control. And what it does is it begins to, over time, cause us to begin to adopt some ideologies or some belief systems or some things on how we perceive the world to work, how we perceive God to work, and what we perceive about ourselves. And this is the belief that begins to formulate inside of our heart. And then what happens is there is a consequent emotion that is a result of this. So let me give you an example. You have an activating event. You lose your job, okay? What you believe about you losing your job will determine the emotion that you not the initial emotion that you have about it, because we all have initial emotions about things, but what pervasive emotion you have about it, what you carry. You see, the world's going to tell you the key to the blessed life is to address the consequent emotion. Take the emotion that you feel about the things that have happened to you or the things that you've done or whatever it is, the mistakes that you've made or where you are in life. Take your emotions, address that emotion. So you feel despondent, you feel depressed, you feel anxious. Okay, take that emotion, address the emotion, find something that helps you not feel that way. This is the key to the blessed life, says the world. It says, okay, so take this and, if a little bit of alcohol, that will help to numb the pain a little bit. Maybe some prescription medication, maybe possibly some hardcore drugs. Maybe just working a little bit harder or trying to accumulate more or trying to pursue this or climb this ladder is going to assuage the pain or this consequent emotion that you're feeling. The world says that's the key to the blessed life. And that's not the key to the blessed life. Because what you attain in that can at best be fleeting and temporary. You might feel good for a little bit, but it won't last. It doesn't last. Let me give this a kind of a real-time example. I was talking to a lady this week who we interviewed her for our podcast, Nothing is Wasted podcast, and she had a major activating event in her life. When she was 7 years old, she was molested by a priest. Even when I say that, I can feel the weight of that, because unfortunately, that probably represented in this room and online is not something that people experience out there. Unfortunately, our world is pervaded by things like that. And we don't have to use our imagination to try to relate to that kind of a grievous injustice. And so I was asking her some questions. I said, well, what did that cause you to begin to believe? Because every activating event causes us to believe something about God, about this world, and about ourselves. Hear me, every circumstance that you go through will cause you to develop beliefs about God, this world, and yourself. I said, what did that cause you to believe? She said, I began to believe, Davey, that God was a manipulative, abusive, narcissistic God who would exploit me for his gain and his pleasure and then discard me when he was done. I said, wow. I said, what did that cause you to believe about this world? She said, what began to happen in my heart as I began to believe this world, nobody in this world could be trusted. That if I was going to survive this world, I had to wall off my heart and begin to figure out ways to hedge around me and preserve myself. I said, well, if I can ask, what did it begin to cause you to believe about yourself? She said, Davey, I know it sounds weird, but I began to believe that there was something intrinsically wrong with me. That somehow I had done something to provoke this spiritual leader in my life to do this. And she said that belief just began to turn around in her mind and in her heart over and over and over, and it led her to several other activating events in her life. Many other sexual abuse experiences, sexual harassment experiences at work, And she was sitting down with her counselor one day going, why does this continue? Why do I find myself in these situations always? What is wrong with me? She said, Davey, I tried everything to address the emotion. And nothing I could input right there would work. And I had to begin unraveling the beliefs that I had about God and myself and other people. You see, friends, I felt extremely weighty this morning as I woke up because God gave me a message, and I woke up and I said, I don't want to preach this message. And I felt this resistance the entire week. And I felt this morning as I got up and I just began to submit it to the Lord. He said, Davey, the reason you don't want to preach this message is because you're addressing the things that are really going on. And the things that we're really dealing with, there is a battle going on in the spiritual, in a different realm and in a different kingdom. And today we want to shed light on that battle. Because every one of us have these different ideologies and beliefs that have formulated because of things that have happened in our life or mistakes that we've made. And it has caused us to have a distorted view of who God is, a distorted view of who we are, and a distorted view of what this world is all about. It is the primary motivation and strategy of the enemy. We have a very real enemy. His primary motivation is to take and distort and pervert the imago Dei, the image of God in every single one of us. He wants to attack it. He wants to make sure that we are not seeing ourselves as God sees us. And the way he'll do that is he'll put a distorted, skewed lens, a upside down lens on how we view God because of our experiences or because of our influences. And friends, listen to me. If we don't see God for who he really is, we will never believe who he says that we are. And since the beginning of time, the enemy has been attacking the imago Dei in our lives. You might be like, David, what are you talking about, the imago Dei? At the very beginning of time, God created us as humans with a different, distinct, unique thing that he put inside of us that he did not put in animals or plants. He didn't put it anywhere else in his creation. The image of God. My friend Lamorris Crawford says, God took a selfie and made you. That he put himself inside of you, a reflection of himself that means this one thing: you and I have intrinsic value. We have inherent value that nobody can steal from us or rob from us, though the enemy will try. Which is why, as the enemy looks at everything that's going on in our world today, he is dancing with supposed victory because there are people treating other people differently because of the color of their skin. Our world is espousing this idea that somehow we are different in value. Which is the same reason why the enemy was dancing as all of these activating events were happening in this girl's life that I was interviewing. Because he does not want us to see God for who he really is. Because if we saw God for who he really is, it would change everything about us. And it would change everything about how we interface with this world. I asked this girl, I said, what began to happen as you were trying to untangle this? She said, what I had to realize and understand is that these beliefs were so strong inside of me because of what took place. And the enemy was continuing to put the same kind of activating event in my life to reinforce this false belief that I had. But at each one of those activating events, I realized that there was a strategy that God had armed me with. And it's the strategy of truth. It's the strategy of God's word and the Holy Spirit's power because of what Jesus did for us on the cross to make level playing field every single one of our situations, that we could all be forgiven, and what he did by raising from the dead to eradicate the stronghold of sin and death in our lives. To reinstate the imago Dei in each one of us, to reclaim for us that we have intrinsic value. She said, Davey, that was the strategy I had to then put in place and replace that false belief with the right belief, a true narrative, so that then I could receive and experience a different consequent emotion, a blessed emotion. that I could be happy about what happened in my life. What? I didn't say this in any of the other messages, but I need you to understand that as you and I are experiencing things, there's several different similar experiences the enemy's going to keep putting in our lives to reinforce this. And in each one of those experiences, God is inviting us into healing by replacing that with truth. There are actual physiological neural pathways that begin to happen in our brain as we begin to buy into falsehoods and lies. And they call them ruts in our brain. And the only way those can be changed is, come on, Romans 12, 1 through 2, do not conform any longer to the rut or the pattern of this world, what the kingdom of the world tells you, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Yes. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. You change the belief. So when Jesus came and said, blessed are those who, if we were in a modern context, he would say, hey, you're blessed if you have experienced a molestation when you were 7 years old by a priest. What? It's so hard to understand unless you sit across from somebody who's experienced that, or you've experienced some kind of tragedy and you've begun to see how God in his sovereignty and love and grace begins to untangle the false beliefs that you and I hold about God. Do you know the primary strategy of the enemy to destroy the Imago Dei in us actually exists in trying to get us to see God falsely? And the way he does that is by trying to disrupt our relationship with our earthly father. It's no coincidence we're talking about this on Father's Day. I don't know what your experience is with your earthly father. But I do know that there is a deterioration, an enemy strategy deterioration of our idea and view of good, strong, biblical fatherhood that the enemy has crept into our culture. And it's subtle. Oh, it's subtle. Just think about the shows that we watch, every sitcom that we watch. It seems like this one narrative takes place. When things hit the fan, don't call the dad, right? Like he's not the guy to go to because he's a doofus who doesn't have a clue what's happening. Like Peter Griffin, hello. Homer Simpson, you're not calling that guy, okay? Phil Dunphy, it's funny and it's comedic, it provides entertainment, but subtly there's a narrative that's being espoused here. This is why many of us, as many times I talk to somebody, even if they had the best earthly dad, there's something that feels lacking. This is why, and I wish I could go into all the statistics, there is an overwhelming rate of male inmates in prison who did not grow up with a dad. They grew up in fatherless homes. There's an attack on the Imago Dei in us by virtue of fatherhood. Did you know that who you believe about God, the foundation of that, it begins to get established by the time you're 5 years old? 5 years old. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-month-old. And to me, when I heard that statistic, I was like, oh, there's a heavy, heavy burden on us as dads to show up. And not try to show them something that we're strong, but to show up and show them who their heavenly Father is. Because friends, when it comes to parenting and the culture of your home, more is caught than is taught. I did not mean to go into all of that depth, but I hope that was helpful. I want to kind of bring back to this place that Jesus was at where he says, hey, listen, there is two kingdoms. There is a kingdom of the world, and there is a kingdom of God. And the kingdom of God is upside down. So as I was talking with this girl, I began to realize that what she believed about God is very much like what we believe about God as well. We can tend to believe, man, God's too busy for me. You know, he's kind of far off, and he's distant, and he's negligent, and those beliefs begin to creep in and begin to grow. But the only way to change that is to see who God really is. This past week I was talking to my wife. She's a PA. She's not practicing right now, but physician's assistant. We kind of geek out over like the anatomy. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, but then God called me into ministry, and God always gets his way. Hello. So I went into ministry. And so we're kind of geeking out over the anatomy of stuff, and so she talked to me about the anatomy of an eye. She was kind of teaching me about this. I want to show you the anatomy of an eye. It's really crazy. If you see an image that comes into your eye, or light, really, when you're seeing an image, light is coming into your eye. It's illuminating the images that are in front of you. So light comes into your eye. It passes through your cornea and your lens, and then it's refracted twice to flip the image. Isn't that interesting? So what you really see is an image that's upside down when you see it. Were it not for this really important organ that connects your eye to your occipital lobe. And that organ is called the optic nerve. And what the optic nerve does is it translates the image, it flips it again so that your occipital lobe can understand it. Come on, you see where I'm going with this? You and I have been empowered with two spiritual optic nerves. And that is the Word of God and the Holy Spirit. And these things translate for us the activating events that are taking place in our life. So every event that we see going on in our life, we can see what we want to see. Come on, Jeep. We can either see it from the lens of the kingdom of this world and what the world tries to espouse to us, or we can see it through the lens of what God says. So when we hear things or we experience things like a devastating loss, and we're like, man, I don't want to dive into this like spiritual, this vortex of like mourning and despondency and stuff like that. So the world says, don't mourn, numb the pain, step out of it because you'll get lost in that. We go, no. The truth of God's word says, though weeping may tarry through the night, joy comes in the morning. The truth of God's word says, though we suffer for a little while, God will himself. He doesn't send an emissary. He doesn't send an ambassador. He does it himself. He himself will restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish your feet. God's word tells us the truth of what's really going on, and it flips the image for us. I'm going to invite Eric to come out and help me close this. I'm a geek over the Hebrew language because the Hebrew language is like it's the language of God's people. It's what the original Old Testament was written in. It's the language that the Israelites, God's chosen people, would speak and they would write in. And so there's significance and meaning in the Hebrew language. And as I was tasked with this idea of, Dave, what's the blessed life? What does it mean to live the blessed life? I looked up the word blessing in Hebrew. And I found that the word blessing is barakah. Can you say barakah? There's barakah it means blessing, but it also means a couple of other things. And in the Hebrew language, when one word means multiple things, it's unlike the English language in this. When one word means multiple things, it means all those things are connected. That they all have to do with each other. A little side note, because this is the 11:30 service and I can take time to say this. When a Hebrew word is spelled backwards, it actually means this is the opposite of this. It's really kind of crazy. Go and do some research yourself. But the Hebrew words hold significance, major significance. And barakah doesn't just mean blessing. You know what else barakah means? Barakah means to kneel. Right? You can't miss this. Our blessing is determined by the choice we make of whom to kneel to. Are we going to kneel in servitude to the kingdom of the world? To this image that's upside down, that by default we see it in an upside down image? Are we gonna kneel to that kingdom that says, hey, there's reason to fear. There's reason to be anxious. There's reason to be depressed. There's reason. Are we going to kneel to that? Is that where our servitude is going to be? Is that where we're going to live and exist and reside? Is that where the ruts in our brain are going to continue to move in that direction? Is that where we're going to kneel? Or are we going to kneel to a different kingdom, to a different ideology, to a different belief? A belief that says, hey, no matter what, no matter if you see it, justice will prevail. But I don't see it right now, God. Well, you can see what you want to see. The question is, do you trust God to bring about justice? Do you trust God enough that if you and I espouse and live in kingdom principles like mercy and grace and love, if we hold all people to the imago Dei, the intrinsic value that they have, if we live in that kingdom, that God will make things right. The reason Jesus comes on the crowd and says, blessed are those who mourn, is because he's saying here and now, not in the future, but here and now is a new kingdom. The kingdom that is manifested by the person of Jesus. And you can trust in him. And I know it seemed like, Davey, I thought you were going to talk about the blessed life. I thought you were going to have some cool formula for how we can, kind of equate and calculate the blessed life. This seems too simple. You're telling me the blessed life exists in trust? It's got to be more than that, right? I wish it was. I wish it was more than just, do you trust him? In every situation that we run into where we feel like God cannot be trusted, the truth of his word, the promises of Scripture remind us that in that situation, God can be trusted. Though we may not see it now, he can be trusted. And if we operate our life making the next decision that is right in his kingdom, he can be trusted with the results. This is what it means, friends, to live the blessed life. So in every situation we can go, hey, how you doing? I'm blessed. Man, you just lost your job. I know. I'm blessed. Because I can't wait to see how God takes this picture and turns it upside down. I can't wait to see how he takes this thing that seems so far gone and completely restores it. He can be trusted. Many of you guys know my story. And story of losing my wife to a murder almost 5 years ago, and I walked in to find her. There's something significant that I've never shared really publicly on a platform, but I shared it last service, and I want to share it with you. When I walked in and I found her, I rushed to her side and immediately called 911. I sat and I waited for the paramedics. I was kneeling beside her, and it felt like the paramedics took hours, because this moment was just extremely traumatic, and to say the least. And I don't know why, but the next thought that popped in my head was call your dad. Even now, as I say it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because my dad lived 500 miles away. He lives in North Carolina. There's no way that he could do anything about this. But the next thought that I had while I was waiting on the paramedics, in this moment, it was like an instinctive response was call your dad. I have an unbelievable dad. I'm so grateful for the fact that my dad, in any situation, he just did the best he could to pursue after Jesus. He's not perfect, but he did the best he could to try to show my brother and I and our family love and tenderness and care and how to be a man. And I pulled my phone, I called him, I said, Dad, I don't know what's going on, but something happened to Amanda and I need you to pray. I just need you to pray right now. And I don't even remember hanging up the phone or saying goodbye, but it felt like it just kind of lingered in that. My dad said, we'll be there, I'll pray. And later I started reflecting on that. I said, why was that my response? Why was that my initial gut instinct right there? And as I look back on it, reflect on it, I think something powerful was happening right there. I think the image of God, the Heavenly Father, I think it was erupting inside of me. And my dad, man, my dad's been there for me for a lot of things, but there's no way he could do anything about that moment right there. But there was something in me that said, Davey, your dad can do something about this. Your dad can make this right. Your dad can restore this. Your dad can be here. And that perhaps is probably the most amazing thing about living the blessed life and walking in an upside down kingdom is that whatever we go through, our heavenly dad is with us. And he can do something about it. And he can change the situation. And if he doesn't change the situation, he can change our perspective and cause us to see what he is doing in it. And this is what it means to live the blessed life, friends. He loves you. And he cares for you. And he is crazy about you. And you are his son. And you are his daughter. And nothing can take that position from you. This week, my challenge would be to ask him to begin to unravel some of those false beliefs that you have. Say, God, what do I believe about you that's not true? And how is that causing me to see the world and see everybody else and interface with reality in a skewed perspective? I want to see your kingdom, God. I want to be a part of your kingdom coming. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Lord, we want to be a people of your kingdom. As simple as the call is, and yet as difficult as it can be, we want to bow our knee to you, Jesus. Though we would never ask for any of the situations and conditions that were laid out in the Beatitudes, we would never ask for them, but God, as we experienced you in them, we also realized we would never trade them for the world. So Jesus, would you just help us to see you as who you really are? Would you change us? Make us more into your likeness as we bend our knee in trust to your kingdom. God, we just step in and respond today. However we need to respond. Jesus, I pray that those who need to give their life to you, they would do that. In these next few moments, they would just give their life to you. They would recognize that you can be trusted. They don't have to wall themselves off. They don't have to try to escape or hedge themselves back, self-preserve. They can trust you. They can open themselves up to your kingdom reality. Because of what you did for us, Jesus, on the cross to take the penalty of our sin and death. And because you raised from the dead, Jesus, we can trust you with every circumstance. We thank you. We worship you right now. In your name, amen.